Hi, this is Ali Rango of littleguy.cgi.com. Today you're going to learn how to take a highly dense mesh like one of these two meshes that you see right here. You're going to learn how to take that dense mesh that is a million polygons, over a million polygons, and then turn that into a low poly mesh that is about 30,000 polygons. Can you tell from looking here which of the two is which? Retopology is useful, and actually it's more than useful. It is needed if you want to have detailed scopes and then be able to use those scopes in things like animation. As you work your way through this tutorial, there will be on-screen prompts that show you what keys I'm pressing. I'll also be explaining what keys I press, and as I explain to you what I'm doing, I not only will tell you what I'm doing, I'll try to tell you why I'm doing what I'm doing. So if you would like to learn how to retopologize a dragon or even other creatures similar to what you see right here, I think that you're going to really like this tutorial. If you like the videos on this channel, please hit the like button. Also, if you really like the videos, I would ask that you subscribe to the channel. When you hit the like button, you let the YouTube robots know that you like this video and that you would like to see more videos like this, and it helps the channel out, so thank you for that. If you're watching this channel, just by watching the channel, you're helping to support the channel, and I appreciate that. If you would like to support the channel even more and make it easier for me to make videos like this video that you're watching now, if you look to your upper right hand corner, if you click that button, you'll be able to go to my Patreon page and support me on Patreon. So if you do that, thanks again, and already thank you for watching this video. To be able to download the original dragon sculpt and use that scope to work along with this tutorial, if you go to littleguy.cgi.com and then go to assets, if you scroll down, you'll see dragon. If you click here, you'll be able to download the original dragon sculpt, and this will allow you to use that scope to work along with the tutorial. Hi, this is Ali Arango of littleguy.cgi.com, and today I'm going to show you how to retopologize a dragon in Blender 2.8. So let's get started. Okay, what you see in front of you is the result of another tutorial that I did showing you how to make this dragon. I'll put a link up in the corner so you can get to that tutorial. Also, to just download this so you can work along with this tutorial, if you go to littleguy.cgi.com, go to assets, and then scroll down and click on characters, you should be able to download the dragon mesh from here. Okay, in Blender 2.8, if you want to pan your view, you can hold Shift as well as the middle mouse button, and you'll be able to pan your view. You can also, if you're on a tablet, you can come up to the upper right hand side and left click and drag and pan your view like that. If you want to zoom in and out, you can roll your mouse wheel. You can also go to the upper right hand side and left click and drag. If you want to rotate your view, if you hold the middle mouse button as well as the Alt button, you can rotate your view that way. You can also go to your upper right, left click and drag, and you can rotate your view that way as well. Okay, the first thing we want to do is to make sure that our separate pieces that make up our dragon are joined, with the exception of the teeth. So if we click here, we can see this is one piece right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the teeth, which are a separate piece. I'm going to press H to hide them. I'm going to click on the camera, press H to hide that, then click on this light, and then press H to hide that as well. Okay, most of the pieces of the dragon's body we want to be joined to the dragon, with the exception of a few pieces. So I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to click on the teeth as well as the gums. We're going to press H to hide them. Now I'm going to move my mouse to the left of the dragon's head. I'm going to hold Shift B, left click and drag, and that's draws a zoom box that just lets us zoom in very quickly. That was Shift B that I pressed. So now I'm going to click on the eyeball here, and then I'm going to press H to hide the eyeballs. Okay, I'm going to zoom back out. I'm going to click on the light, hold Shift, then while holding Shift, I'm going to left click on the camera. I just let go of Shift, and now I'm going to press H to hide those objects as well. Okay, with those objects hidden, we're going to move to our upper left. And when I say move, I'm talking about moving our mouse. We're going to press B for box select, left click and drag to select our entire dragon. Now that we have the whole dragon selected, we're going to hold Shift, and then while holding Shift, click right on the dragon's head, and then I let go of Shift. Okay, the reason why we want to select the main part of the dragon last is because we want the other pieces, the other objects, to inherit the pivot point of our main object, which is our main dragon's body. Okay, with all these objects selected, what we can do is now right click, and in Blender 2.8 we get this object context menu, and we'll just left click on join. So now all of our objects are one object. At least all the objects that we had selected are one object. We still have the other objects, which are the eyeballs as well as the teeth and the gums that we didn't want joined, currently hidden. Okay, I'm going to roll the mouse wheel to zoom in. So what is retopology anyway? All right, when you make things up in 3D, you can, there's multiple ways of doing it. The main ways that I do it is by box modeling, or now by sculpting things. When you sculpt things, like this dragon is sculpted, right? We have this dragon selected. I'm going to go to the upper left. I'm going to left click, and then I'm going to select edit mode. In Blender, you tend to work in modes. When you come into Blender, you're in object mode. When you tend to work with objects, you'll be in edit modes. Work with them as far as making them. You'll be in edit mode or scope mode. So currently we're in edit mode. You see all these dots, these black dots. Those dots basically are faces of geometry. So because this was sculpted, there are a lot of faces, a lot of geometry. Something like this would be very hard to animate because it's so much geometry. As a matter of fact, when I click from object mode to go into edit mode, Blender paused just to come in here. And it's just a lot of geometry. Having a lot of geometry puts a lot of workload on a computer. Now, these were made separate. We joined these shapes. See how the geometry is here compared to here? Basically, what retopology is we take geometry, go over this dense geometry, get the form of this dense geometry, but have a lot less geometry to work with, which makes meshes able to be easily worked with as far as computers moving them around and things like animation. So that is what we are working on and trying to achieve as we work our way through this tutorial. Okay, so I'm going to go to the upper left. I'm going to left click, and then I'm going to go back to object mode. Okay, so you might sit there and say, well, why sculpt if you have to redo? That's what I used to say, by the way. I was like, why am I going to sculpt something if I have to redo it? And basically, the reason why you would sculpt something which gives you that geometry that's hard to animate is because, as an artist, it tends to make you a lot freer as how you work. You don't have to think so much about faces and edges. You kind of can block out things fairly quickly, and just whatever you can think of, you pretty much can make. So I think it tends to make your models look much better when you sculpt. The price of sculpting is, though, if you want to use the model, or the mesh, I should say, for animation, then you have to go through retopology. Okay, to start off this process, we want to go to front mode. There's multiple ways of getting to front mode. We're going to go, what I'm going to show you now is we're going to go to the upper right hand corner, and we're going to look to this green dot here. In Blender, typically when you press 1 on the number keypad, you'll go into front view. 3 will take you into right view. 7 will take you into top view. So when we hover here, see where we see the menu saying shortcut number pad 1. When we left click here, because that's a shortcut for front view, this will take us into front view. So I'm going to left click there. So now we're in front view. Then what we can do is we'll go to this hand right here and we'll left click and drag to the side to pan our view. To start off this process, the first thing we want to do is make sure this is what this thing is this is our 3D cursor. We want to make sure that that is right in the center of our scene. So I'm going to hold shift, press C, and that put our 3D cursor right in the center of our dragon, as well as our scene. Okay, with our 3D cursor in the center of our screen, the reason why we want it there is because in Blender, where this 3D cursor is at, is where objects tend to come into Blender at. So what we're going to do is hold Shift, then press A. This brings up our Add To menu. We're going to go to Mesh, and then we're going to go to Plane to bring a plane in. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button, rotate the view, so you can see there's that plane right there. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button, rotate again. And what we want to do is actually push this plane so that it is in front of the dragon's face. I'm going to go back to the upper right hand corner, hover over the green, make sure I see that shortcut number pad 1, left click to go back into front mode. And now with front mode, with us back in front mode and back with this plane here in front of the dragon, we're just about ready to start our work. Okay, so what we need to do, what we still need to do is we need to go straight up. See this thing? It looks like a roller. We're going to click on, looks like a triangle here. And these are some of our snapping options. So we're going to left click. And what we want to do is change this option from the default setting of increment to face. And then with this face selected, now we want to look to where we see this project individual elements. We're going to put a check mark right here. And then now what we're going to do is click, looks like a magnet here. We're going to left click that to turn on snapping. Okay, the reason why we did that is we're going to take the plane, we're going to reduce that to 1 vertex, and then we're going to use that vertex to build up our retopologized mesh. Okay, with the plane selected, we're going to press the M key. This brings up our Move To Collection menu. We're going to select New Collection. We're going to name this Low Poly Mesh. We're then going to click OK. The reason why we did that is that will just make it easier for us to work as far as working with and selecting things here in Blender 2.8. Okay, what we're going to do now is go to our upper left-hand corner. We're going to change from object mode to edit mode. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button, rotate the view. Here's our plane that we have selected. We want to change this to 1 vertex. If you look to your upper left-hand corner, you can select vertex select, edge select, or face select. You can also press number 1, 2, or 3 on the number the keyboard numbers, not the number keypad that's like to the right if you have a full keyboard, but if you have a laptop, the upper left number is 1, 2, 3. Will allow you to easily select through vertex, edge, as well as face select. So we want to select vertex select, right? So we have vertex selected here. Very nice. I like how Blender 2.8 has, you can very clearly see the vertices. Anyway, with these selected, what we want to do is hold Alt. While holding Alt, press M. This brings up our Merge menu. Then we want to do is select at center. Okay, an important point to keep note of. See this orange dot right here? This is actually our pivot point and not our, at least I don't think it's our vertex. So what we're going to do is aim. Right now, the pivot point as well as the vertex to the side of the face, right? Then we're going to press, let's aim it for the upper eyebrow. We're going to press G. Okay. I'm moving my mouse. See the little dot moving to the side? I just left click. So this is our one vertex. This is the pivot point. So the pivot point is right in the center of our dragon, and that's where we want it to be. Just so you understand, in Blender, when you are we're currently in edit mode, right? If we were in object mode and we move that plane around, we would move the pivot point. But since we're inside of the edit mode of the plane, we were able to move this one vertex and have the pivot point still stay in the center of our dragon, which is it's good. That's where we want it to be. Okay, what we're going to do now is zoom in. I'm going to hold shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan. We have this one vertex here. To select that, I'm going to press A, which selected that vertex since that's the only thing in our view right now, or only geometry we have right now. I'm going to push this down basically towards the corner of the eye. Okay, the way I like to do retopology is I like to have one vertex here, and then 3 here and 3 here. All right. So we can hold control. I'm holding control now. I'm not clicking anything yet, but we're gonna put on 3 vertices spaced out along here. So it's gonna be, I'm holding control. I'm gonna right click. So there's 1, 2, there's 3. Right. So now we're gonna go to the corner of the eye. So there's 4. So here's our, I'm letting go of control. Here's our vertices here, and then the 3 on top. So now we're going to make another 3. They're going to match up with these. And when I say match up, basically there's going to be one position here, one position here, one position here. So we're trying to have those in alignment with these right here, right? Then we're going to connect the last vertex to here. All right, so let's do that. I'm going to hold control. I'm going to right click. I'm letting go of control. Now for this last connection here, what we want to do is I let go of control. I'm going to hold shift, click here, and here being this first vertex that we had. Now I'm letting go of shift and I'm pressing F. Okay, so now that we have that, what we're going to do is let's hold Alt then press A. That is another way of deselect. You can also deselect by just left clicking on nothingness. I'm going to press A to select that geometry. I'm now going to press E and then right click. When I pressed E, it doesn't look like I did anything. I made new geometry, and you can't see that new geometry because it's right in place with the other geometry. But with that geometry selected, we're going to press S to scale. And now you can see that geometry going out. So I'm going to left click to lock that geometry in. Okay, let's make things easier for us to work with. So we're going to go to the upper right hand corner. We're going right to this, looks like a triangle, arrow right here. We're going to change this to Studio. Okay, so we were on MatCap, now we're on Studio. And now what we're going to do is we're going to move our mouse down and we're going to left click on Random. And what this does is, this is a very nice feature of Blender 2.8. It makes your objects in Blender be different colors. It just picks random colors, and it tends to make things easier for you as you work. Something else we can do while we're in here, this back face culling, we can put a check mark right there. That just means you won't be able to see geometry from the back. We also can see how this is like, when I say this geometry is like in the mesh, right? We can help to see things better by going to our object panel right here, going to viewport display, and then putting a check mark next to in front. So now you can see we can see all of our geometry. When you work in 3D, you typically, you learn things, you forget them, you learn them, you forget them, depending on whatever job you're doing at the place. There's all these people coming over to Blender now with Blender 2.8. It's nice. I think it's good for all of us Blender people. I used to watch these guys flip normals. I was thinking about them because they just did a video on Retopology. They were like Maya guys, I think. So I'm like, oh, okay. So I don't know, I can't remember if I remembered this before, but I was watching their video on Retopology and I saw them doing this display setup. So I was like, oh, that's good stuff. Anyway, with our eye, set up, and with our random colors set, we can continue to move forward. Something else we can do to make things better for ourselves is we can put a mirror modifier on here. So we're going to click on what looks like the wrench right here, or it looks like a wrench. This is our add modifier panel. We're going to left click. We're then going to select the mirror modifier, and now you can see on the other side we have our geometry mirrored. I'm going to click this on cage button, so this geometry looks just like this geometry right here. Okay, with our mirror modifier on, let's put a check mark next to clipping. Let's also go up to our upper left. Let's go to edge select. We're going to click here. I'm going to hold shift and then click here. I'm going to press E to extrude, right click, and I'm going to push this geometry towards itself. Now it's forming this line because of this clipping. It's going into our mesh, which we don't want. So what we're going to do is go to the upper left. I clicked off of here just to move the manipulator. So now I have this. Oh, the manipulator's still in the way. Turn. I turn just to move the manipulator. Now I'm going to press G and then left click. Now when I press G, you can see that the vertex I had selected is now snapped right to the front of our geometry. So I'm going to left click here, press G. What I'm doing now is I'm rotating the view, just trying to make sure that our other geometry is okay. And see how we have these big thick planes of geometry? It's easier to do very basic geometry and then come back and cut than to start off with more advanced geometry. Okay, so with that being said, let's put a loop cut right here. We're going to hold Control, press R. You can see our loop cut preview. So I'm going to left click once, left click a second time. Let's click this vertex there and press G. Let's click here, press G. Oh, didn't want to move that. We'll come back. See, we have all this geometry here. We'll come back. I'm just taking a look. Okay, see how this is blue here. Sometimes this isn't your geometry going into the scope. Sometimes your normals are not facing the correct direction. Normals are basically the direction that polygon should be facing. So when we have backface calling on, so most likely what's going on is these normals are not facing the right direction. So what we can do is we can press A to select all of our geometry. We could press Shift N, or we can go to let's go to face select. So you would do select everything, go to face select, then press Shift N, or we can go to mesh, go down to normals, and then we'll select let's try recalculate outside. All right, so see how everything is transparent now, so we don't want that. We'll press A again. We'll go back to mesh, normals, and then we'll select flip. And now you can see our geometry looks much better like this. Okay, we're gonna hold them in the mouse button, rotate the view. Let's hold Control, press R to put a loop cut right here. We're going to left click again to lock that loop cut in. We're going to go to the upper left to vertex select. See how this is like bunched up here? Don't like that. So I'm looking here, right? See how this, like, if you look here, this goes over there. Don't like that. So I'm adjusting this. I'm going to hold Control, press R to put another loop cut here. I'm going to left click once, left click a second time to lock that in. Sometimes you'll see me click on a vertex, and often I'm just moving the manipulator out of the way. It's easier to click sometimes than, you know, other ways of, you know, getting the manipulator to move out of the way. I'm just adjusting these vertices here. And press G. Now I'm zooming in, trying to get past the vertex select. Let's hold Control R. Put a loop cut here. So I put a loop cut there. I'm going to put a loop cut here just so it's even for later on. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to Edge Select to the upper left. I selected that. Okay, I'm going to hold Alt, press A. Sometimes I use Alt A instead of clicking on nothingness. Like I can click on nothingness to deselect, right? So, but if I'm here, I have to move my mouse all the way over here, and then left click on nothingness to deselect. So I'll press Alt A to deselect, so I don't have to move my mouse. And when you are doing a lot of 3D work, you'll find that the little small movements add up. So when you can save movement, a lot of times it's probably worth the time to save the movement. Okay, with edge select on, we're going to click this edge here. We're going to hold Control. We're going to right click. Right click. Right click. We're coming down the jaw. I'm going to press S to scale this geometry down. Take the manipulator and push it up some. I'm going to hold them in the mouse button to rotate the view just to see better. I'm going to hold Control, hold Control, hold Control, hold Control. And I'm careful when I'm here not to take this edge all the way to the center. I make the new geometry and then I use my manipulator to push that towards the center. Okay, I'm going to hold the middle mouse button, rotate the view. I'm going to edge select. Pull that back some. Like that. I'm going to hold Control, press R to put a loop cut here. I'm going to left click once, left click a second time to lock that in. I'm going to go to Edge Select. Pull this back. Something like that. I'm going to go to Vertex Select, left click here, hold Control, try to match up here. So you see what I'm doing? I'm letting go of Control. I'm just making this even. I try to rotate the view so I can work, to give myself the easiest view to work from. Holding Control. And I come to the center view. I purposely don't go directly towards the center. Okay, what we can do now is go to the upper left, go to Edge Select. We'll click on this edge, and this is a very cool thing that Blender does. With this edge selected and with the geometry being even, I should be able to press F, 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 F. Excellent. Blender knows to fill that geometry in, so I'll go to Vertex Select. It's a nice fast way to work, and I'll push this vertex towards its mirrored self. Okay, I'm going to hold the middle mouse button, rotate the view. I'm going to click here, pull that up some, pull this up some. I'm going to hold Control, press R to put a loop cut in right there. And I am, with Edge Select on, I'm going to left click here to left click on nothingness. I was like, oh, it's not that far, so I clicked on nothingness instead of pressing all day. Anyway, I'm going to, as I go through this, I'm going to bring out geometry. I'm going to glance down towards here as I do this. So I'm going to hold Control. So I'm kind of like looking there. Hold Control, I'm looking here. Control, I'm looking there. Turning just to get a better view. That's my purpose for turning the view there. I'm looking here. Now I'm going to be looking there. Turning. See how this is, looks kind of like empty from this view. Okay, I'm also looking up here as well. Now I'm looking here. So I'm going to hold Control, right click, looking here. Okay, I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to rotate the view. I'm going to hover here, hold Control, press R to put a loop cut here. Left click to lock that in. Or left click once, sorry. Left click a second time to lock it in. Now I'm going to hold Control, press R to put a loop cut here. I'm going to left click once, left click a second time to lock that in. With Edge Select on, I'm going to click here. I'm going to click all the way over to the upper left, the select box, just to get the manipulator out of the way. I'm holding Shift to select these three edges. To let go of Shift, I'm pressing F. I'm going to left click on nothingness. We have Edge Select still on. I'm going to click here. Now we're going to press F, F, F. And Blender filled that geometry in for us. Okay, so we still have this selected. Let's press F, 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 F. Huh. Pretty good. Okay, now I'm going to left click on nothingness to deselect. Click here. I'll click back on our move tool to bring the manipulator back, and I'll push this geometry towards itself. Push this down some, like that. Then I'll left click on nothingness to deselect. Okay, so we're going to go to the upper left, go to vertex select. We'll push this vertex towards itself, holding the middle mouse button and take a look. Come along well so far. I don't like this coming to a point like this. So basically, what I'm doing now is I'm thinking, okay, how can I not have this point? So I'm thinking I'm going to click, go to face select, the upper left, click here, hold shift, click here, press X to bring up our delete menu, choose faces to delete, go back to vertex select. I'm going to hold Control, click here, as well as here. Hold shift to select these 4 vertices, then press F. Basically, the mouth was coming to a point. I did not like that. So now I'm going to hold Control, press R to put a loop cut right there. Holding Shift, I'm going to press F. Pull this here. I'm going to hold Shift to select these 4. Yes, I do want that. So I'll click here. Selected those vertices, now I'm pressing F to fill that in. So now the mouth doesn't come to that sharp point. We have this space. That's why I did that. Okay, we're going to hold the mouse button to rotate the view. We're going to go to the upper left to the select box. We did this mainly so we don't see our manipulator and have it get in our way. We're going to go to Edge Select. I rolled the mouse wheel. It zoomed in too much. Now I'm going to hold Control as well as the middle mouse button to zoom back to get a smooth zoom. I'm looking at this center line right here. I want to reduce the geometry coming up from here, right? So this center line, I'm pointing you to so you can see the geometry next to the center line. You don't want that. You want this piece of geometry. So I'm going to click the edge here. I'm going to hold Control. I'm going to go almost straight up, right click. Now I'm moving slightly towards the center and I'm right clicking again, letting go of Control now. Going back to the Move tool, pushing this geometry towards itself. I'm going to left click on nothingness, which apparently didn't work. I'm going to hold Alt, then A to deselect. I'm going to go to the upper left select box just so the manipulator doesn't pop up. Left click, hold Shift. Holding Shift allows me to select more than one edge at a time. I'm letting go of Shift. Now I'm pressing F. To fill in that geometry. Now I'm left clicking on nothingness to deselect. Okay, what we're going to do is we're on Edge Select. We're going to left click here. We're going to go to the right. We're going to take away this check mark next to clipping. Okay, we did that because we want to bring geometry out. I'm going to hold Shift as well as the middle mouse button. There we go. But we don't want the geometry to cause issues by interacting with itself. So I'm going to hold Control and then I'm going to right click. Holding Shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan. Holding Control and then right clicking. Holding the middle mouse button to rotate the view. Holding Control again. Right clicking. While holding Control, let go of Control. Hold Shift. As the middle mouse button, holding Control again. Holding Shift to let go of Control. Okay, I'm holding the middle mouse button to rotate. Just trying to get a decent view. I'm going to press S to scale. Holding Control again. Holding Shift and the middle mouse button, I let go of Control. I'm pressing S to scale again. Holding Control, and I'm trying to not have issues by crossing over that center line point. Holding Shift and the middle mouse button to pan. And I press S to scale. Holding Control again, holding Shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan. Holding Shift and the middle mouse button to pan. Holding Control again now. So basically when I move the screen, I let go of Control so I can move. You can see that when you start to have geometry crossing over, pressing S to scale tends to help. I'm going to hold shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan. I'm going to hold control as well as the middle mouse button to zoom in. I am still holding control. I'm going to right click. Okay, what we're going to do now is zoom back. Hold the middle mouse button to rotate. I'm going to hold shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan. I'm going to hover here, hold shift, press B to draw a zoom box to zoom in. I'll zoom back from there. I'm going to left click on nothingness to deselect. Okay, we still have edge select selected. We're going to click here. We're pretty much going to be doing the same thing we did from the two edges we selected from up here. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to rotate. Hold control, and then I'm actually right clicking away from the center slightly. Holding shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan. Okay, as far as the actual lengths of each face, don't let yourself be too concerned with that right now. The main thing we want to do is connect this with the back. The work that we did before is what I mean. Holding shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan. Rolling the mouse wheel to zoom back. I'm going to roll my mouse back. Right click. Okay, I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to rotate the view, and I'm going to hold shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan. Now I'm rolling the mouse wheel in. As I roll the mouse wheel in, I'm rolling the mouse wheel a lot, and I am barely getting any zoom. If this happens, you can press the number keypad period, or you can go to view, navigation. Is that right? Oh, this is it right here. Frame selected. And then basically your zoom will be fixed after you do that. Okay, so I'm going to hold. Well, let's press S to scale this down. Hold control. Now we're just going to hold shift to select both of these. I'm going to press G and actually pull that to the side. Now I'm going to press F to fill. Left click on nothingness to deselect. Okay, with edge select on, I'm going to left click here, hold control. We're going to use something called the shortest path. We're going to press, we're going to go to the manipulator. To the upper left I went. We're going to, well, first we need to turn on clipping to the upper right. I put a check mark there. Now we'll push this geometry towards itself. We've got some strangeness here, so we'll click here, press G. So what you want to do is get your view right, press G, then left click to get that to lock in. So I held shift and the mouse button to pan. I'm just pushing this center point towards itself. Okay, I'm holding shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan. I'll roll the mouse wheel to zoom in. I'm getting that slow zoom again. So I'm going to go to view, frame selected, and then now it's fixed. Holding control as well as the middle mouse button to get a smooth zoom in. I'm left clicking on nothingness. Now I'm clicking back here and then pushing this geometry towards itself. Holding the middle mouse button to rotate. Left clicking on nothingness to deselect. Okay, so we're just continuing on. I'm going to hold shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan. Okay, I'm holding shift and the middle mouse button to pan, holding the middle mouse button to rotate. Oop. The manipulator, well, the manipulator is useful now, so we'll zoom in to get past the manipulator. And once you get this center line, it's kind of like an anchor for everything else. I'm gonna hold shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan. I'm gonna left click on nothingness to deselect and zoom back. Okay, I'm gonna hold shift as well as the middle mouse button. Well, I'm on control of the middle mouse button to zoom in now, so we're gonna, if you're crossed over, you might have to pull to the side and then push your geometry towards itself. Hold shift as well as the middle mouse button. Pan. Starting to have that view again, so I'm letting go of shift. I'm going to go to view. Like everything's slowing down, so I'll click frame selected, and then that fixes things. Sometimes they're kind of difficult, so I'll just use this to, oh, wait a second. There we go, the push. Okay, I'm going to hold shift as well as the middle mouse button. Hold the middle mouse button to rotate. I'm going to click here. I'm going to skip here. See how this is like crossing over there? If I click here first, push this together, that pulls that piece together there. I'm going to hold shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan. Trying to see if I have that selected. I'm not sure if I have the right thing selected. There we go. Holding shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan. See how this is kind of like crossed over, so I'll skip that. Click here and then push these pieces together, which not quite. There it goes. Holding shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan. Sometimes you have to like grab here. You might, if you have issues like getting the pieces together, like see right here what's going on with me, you can switch to vertex select and push the vertices together. Okay, I'm going to hold shift as well as the middle mouse button. We're just continuing on. Okay, that's actually easier. Just gonna, the vertex select is easier to work with. Holding the middle mouse button and just panning down. So we'll just push these vertices towards each other. Hold shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan. Okay. So I'm going to roll the mouse wheel to zoom back. And you see we have this thing here. And that is from the snapping, right? So how do we fix that? We make sure we're on vertex select, click the vertex, get the view that we want, and then we press G. Press G again. I'm gonna click here just to get that manipulator out of the way. I'm gonna press G. That will flip to the side, and that's fixed now. So we'll left click to deselect. Okay, see how much space there is compared to that. So we'll hold control, loop cut, left click twice, hold control, then press R. That's what I'm doing. Control R puts a loop cut. So I'm gonna left click once, left click again, then left click on nothingness to deselect. I'll click here, go to the upper left. So now we're taking a look. So we have you know, these pieces coming up here, right? When I say pieces, I'm talking about this right here. Okay, what we want to do now is hold the middle mouse button so we can get a side view. I'm going to hold Shift as well as the middle mouse button. To pan, we're going to press C for paint select. We're going to select. We can roll our mouse wheel to make this paint select bigger. This geometry that is up here. I right click to get out of paint select. We have some geometry here that we don't want. I'm going to press C for paint select and then push the middle mouse button to deselect there. Then when I right click to get out of paint select. Okay, the reason why we have this geometry selected is so that we don't interfere with this geometry. So we're going to hold Shift and then press H. And then what that Shift H did was that hid all of the geometry that we didn't have currently selected. Okay, we're going to hold them the mouse button and we just want to move these scales so that they're move these vertices that are in between these scales. So we'll press C for paint select, press G, and we'll try to just move them. C for paint select, right click, get out of paint select. Press G. We'll turn off clipping. When we have vertices that doesn't look like we need, we'll press X, bring up our delete menu, then choose dissolve vertices. Press G. Here we need a loop cut, so we'll hold control, press R to put a loop cut there. We'll press C, G, left click on nothingness, C for paint select, then G to move. What's going on is the vertices are snapping. Probably looks weird, but we're gonna adjust them later. So we're moving these so that they snap in between these scales, basically. Need a loop cut here, so we'll hold control, press R. Then we will left click on nothingness, deselect. Okay. Alt A to deselect. We'll press C for paint select. Right click the out of paint select. Basically, we're moving these. We have these big pieces of geometry. So we're trying to get our geometry so it's in between. The loop cuts are in between is what we're trying to do. So now from me moving from the side, which is actually much easier to moving from the top, I'm just readjusting the geometry. It's like crossed over in itself. Okay, so we'll turn clipping back on. I'm just adjusting these, adjusting these. Holding them in the mouse button to take a look. Clicking here just to move the manipulator. So it's in the way a lot, so I'll just click there. Pressing G to get this to just snap to our sculpted mesh. Clicking here to move the manipulator. This here looks like it's unneeded, so we'll press C. Select there, press X. To bring up our delete menu, then choose dissolve vertices. When you see me turning like that, I'm aiming like this right here. See how this is sticking up? So I like literally get the view that I want. Then I press G to see. In this case, it didn't stick. Okay. Because you aim and then you press G and then you'll stick to what you're looking at as far as your vertex or vertice. A lot of moving around to see if things look right. Okay, I'm going to hold shift as well as middle mouse button to pan. Push these vertices towards themselves. So I'm pushing the vertices towards themselves, trying to make them being the vertices basically be in between the geometry we have sticking up that we want to stick up. Okay, we're gonna hold shift as well as the middle mouse button, pan. Some more adjustments here. So what I'm doing is the same thing I said before. I select the vertices, I aim my view, get the view, and then press G. And your snapping was largely worked by the view that you're actually looking at. Just forward here. See, that's floating in the air, so I get the view that I want, then I press G, and it sticks like, to my view. Okay, I'm going to left click on nothingness to deselect. We want to have geometry that's outside of here, so we'll be able to form these later. That's the plan anyway. I'm going to hold well, I'm not hold control. I'm going to hold shift, press D, then right click. So I duplicated one vertex, right? And now what I'm going to do is hold control. I'm holding control and I am extruding this one vertex, trying to match it up with the geometry that we have. You can do this fairly quickly. I'm holding the middle mouse button to take a look. We'll go down until we get about to the wing. So we'll hold control. And then right here, when we get to the wing, I'm going to left click on nothingness to deselect. Okay, we're going to go to our upper left. We're going to go to object mode. We're going to zoom back. We're going to click on our sculpt. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to rotate the view. We're going to go to our upper left, and then we're going to go into edit mode. Okay, here you can see the density of the mesh, how dense that dragon mesh is. A couple things we're going to do while we're in here. Let's go to phase select. You'll see that the geometry is so dense that as we try to do things in here, it's actually pretty quick. All right, so I'm selecting these pieces of geometry here because I realize now that they're going to cause issues for us, or maybe an issue for us. So with these pieces of geometry selected, I'm going to press the P key, which is our separate menu, and then I'm going to choose separate by selection. So now those are separate objects. Okay, so what we're going to do is go to our upper left, go to object mode. I'm going to click on those separate objects. I'm going to press H to hide them. Then I'm going to click back on our sculpted mesh. We're going to go back to our upper left, then go back into edit mode. Okay, what we want to do now is zoom back, go up to our upper right, click the green ball to go in the front view. We're going to press Z to go to wireframe mode. I'm going to hover my mouse up here, hold control, hold the right mouse button, and draw a lasso select around the wing. When you go to select your leg, be careful that you're not too close to your main body. You don't want to select pieces of the main side that aren't the arm, aren't the legs. So I let go of control, or arm and a leg, or legs. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button. This is a good selection here. So with that done, we're going to click on, looks like a triangle here, and see where we have these vertex groups. We're going to look to the right. We're going to click this plus button. So that made us another vertex group. So we're going to double click here. Computer might lag because there's so much geometry here. There we go. So we're going to name this legs and wing. And then I'm going to click assign. Okay, what we're going to do now is left click on nothingness to deselect. We'll then press Z and then we'll select solid view. Okay, the reason why we did that was, well, we're going to go to the upper left. We're going to select object mode. The reason why we did that was so we could do this. We're going to go to our wrench, which lets us add modifiers. We're going to click the arrow, and then we're going to look for the mask modifier. So we're going to left click here. The mask modifier allows you to hide things in a way. So the mask modifier is applied. We have this vertex group. We're going to left click, select the vertex group that we made, which was legs and wing. So we select that. And we see that everything other than the legs and wing are selected. We want the opposite of that. So we'll click this invert button right here. So now we have everything hidden but the well, we have the legs and wing hidden that we want it to be hidden. Okay, since we have our sculpted body selected, let's go to collection. So we're going to the upper right. We click on the triangle. Here's this sphere, right? So this is our sculpted mesh right here. That's why it's highlighted. We want to make it so we can't select it. So when we look here, we see just the eye. Well, what we need to do is look up to this filter. We'll click this little arrow, and now we see here's these different options. So now we can select the ability to select, so to say. So now here's this sphere, which are sculpted. This is basically our sculpted mesh. So now we'll unclick this arrow, and now we can't select the sculpted mesh. If you're like, why would you want to not select it? It's because we don't want to select it by accident and move it out of alignment with the retopology work that we're doing. So I'm going to click back on our retopology work. We're going to go to our upper left, and now we're going to go back to edit mode. We're going to also hold Alt, then press H to unhide the previously hidden geometry. I'm going to left click on nothing to deselect. Okay, I'm going to hold them in the mouse button to rotate the view. Let's go to vertex select. What we're going to do here is we're going to click here, hold Shift, press D, right click. We made a duplicate vertex, right? With that vertex selected, we're going to hold Control, and we're just basically looking to match these other vertices right next to it. So I'm just holding Control, moving down till we get towards the wing. Okay, what we'll do now is we're going to hold Shift, and then while holding Shift, my manipulator's getting in the way. Oh, it let me select it. If your manipulator's in the way, remember you can click this, that'll take it out of the way. I'm going to press the F key, right? So I'm going to click on nothingness to deselect. I'm going to go to face select. Now I'm going to click here, zoom back so we can see this whole trail right here, and then I'm going to press F, 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 F. Very good. Okay, why did we do that? We did that because we want the framework there for when we work with the geometry to, it's going to deal with these later on. And by having that other geometry hidden, see we did, okay, that's the wings. That's supposed to be how that is. So now we're we can work more easily than we could have before when we had to be concerned about the wing as well as the leg. Okay, so we're on edge select. I'm going to left click on nothingness to deselect. I'm going to left click there, hold control. I'm going to push this down like this, press R to rotate, press S to scale. What we're doing here is setting up to get ready to work on this first limb. I'm going to left click on nothingness to deselect. Okay, what we want to do is hover here. We're going to hold control, press R to put a loop cut in. We're going to left click once. Because we left click once, we can move the loop cut, so I'm moving it some. I'm going to left click again to lock that loop cut in. Then I'm going to left click to deselect. Okay, we want to work just with this geometry right here for now. So I'm going to press, I'm going to go to the upper left, select face select. I'm going to hover here, press L. And then with this selected, I'm going to hold shift and then press H. So everything is hidden except this geometry here. Now I'm going to left click on nothingness to deselect. My main reason for doing that was with snapping. Sometimes things will snap where you don't want them to. I'm going to back to edge select. I'm going to click this edge right here. Remember when we worked on the eye, we had like a vertex, then 3 on the top, 3 on the bottom. We're kind of doing a similar thing right here. We want to have one edge here, an edge here, 3 edges here, then 3 edges there. So, with that being said, I'm going to hold control. So 1, second edge, third edge. Here's the corner edge, first edge. Let's turn off the mirror modifier. I'm going to press G, and just because I have this viewpoint, now you can see this is sticking to where our body's at again. So here's the corner edge. This is the first edge on the side. Here's the second. Here's the third. And then we're going to hold shift, select here, and then press F to fill that in. I'm going to left click on nothingness to deselect. Okay, now we have the basic geometry to begin working our arm. We want to check how many vertices are here. So what we're going to do is we're going to hold, actually we're going to go to back to edge select. We're going to hold Alt, select this edge. Then we're going to go back to, I let go of Alt. We're going back to vertex select. When we look towards the bottom of our screen, look about 2 inches down or beneath my mouse. See where it says verts 9/236. The verts that we currently have selected are 9. We want 10 vertices, because typically when you're working with edge loops, it's better to have even edge loops just because there's more options available to you. It's generally easier. So we have 9 vertices. How can we make this 10? Well, we can easily make I'm going to click here, press G, and then that pops that right back. And what I did was I aimed the view here. Anyway, we want 10 vertices, so I'm going to hold control, press R, left click once, left click a second time to lock that in. Then I'm going to left click to deselect. Okay, so what we're going to do now is go to edge select. We're going to hold Alt, select this edge, go back to the upper left, select vertex select. If you look right beneath my mouse, you'll see a 1, not that. You'll see 240, not that. You'll see the timeline. Underneath there, you'll see verts, :10/240. So we have 10 verts, and that's what we want. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to hold Alt, press H to bring back our previously hidden geometry. We need a face right here because we have this anchor here that I had mentioned to you before. So what we're going to do here is we're going to click here. We're going to hold control, let go of control. Now I'm going to left click on nothingness to deselect. I'll click here, hold shift, selecting these 4 vertices. I let go of shift. Now I'm going to press F to fill that in. I'm going to left click to deselect. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're on vertex select. We're going to click here. I'm going to hold control. And then I'm going to just right click, and I'm just looking here, trying to match up these the vertices as I go up. Okay, what we're going to do now is go to the edge select. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to rotate the view. I'm going to left click here, hold shift. While I'm holding shift, I'm selecting these different edges. I'm going to let go of shift, hold the middle mouse button, rotate the view, holding shift again. And now with these edges selected, I'm going to hold control, press E. This brings up our edges menu. I'm then going to select bridge edge loops. And then I'm going to left click to deselect. Okay, what we're going to do now is hold the middle mouse button to rotate the view. We're going to left click this edge here, and then we're going to press F, 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 F. Very nice that Blender does that for us. We're going to left click here, hold the middle mouse button to rotate the view. We're going to press F, 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 F. Yeah, that is very nice. What we'll do here actually is we'll click here, we'll press shift, manipulator's in the way. We'll press G twice and slide this forward. Click here, hold manipulator's in the way. I'm going to click here. Hold shift, press G twice. G twice lets you edge slide. Lets you slide edges. That's basically what's going on, what I'm doing there. Click here, hold shift, press G twice. Excellent. So I'll deselect. Okay, when you look at the mouth, we actually want there to be an edge loop that comes and runs, from here down. So we can fix this fairly easily. We'll go to face select. We'll select these three faces. We'll press X to bring up our delete menu, then choose faces to delete. Okay, we have face select on. Let's delete this face. I'm going to press X. To bring up our delete menu, then choose faces to delete. And the mouth actually goes like this. So what we're going to do is go to edge select. We'll hold control. And now with this edge selected, we'll hold shift, click here, let go of shift, and then press F to join those two edges. Now left click on nothingness to try to deselect. You want to make sure, absolutely sure you're deselected. You can hold Alt, then press A. For this other geometry, it's pretty easy to hook up. We'll go to vertex select. We'll hold Control and we're just basically matching up the geometry. I'll left click on nothingness to deselect. Okay, what we're going to do now is go to the upper left, go to edge select, click this edge, then we're just going to press F, 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 F. Left click on nothingness to deselect. I'm going to go to vertex select, left click on nothingness to deselect, click here, hold shift, click these vertices, then press F to fill. Then I'm going to left click on nothingness to deselect. Okay, what we're going to do now is hold the middle mouse button to rotate. Okay, what we want to do is select all of these. Well, let's go to edge select first. So I'm going to upper left. We want to select all of these edges here, right? We could do this one by one. However, we can do this much faster by hovering here, holding control, and then while holding control, I'm now holding Alt So I'm holding Alt as well as Control. Then I'm going to left click here. Now I'm letting go of Control as well as Alt. And we selected all of the edges going down that way. Okay, we want this geometry here. We don't want all of these other geometries. So what we're going to do is press Z and then wireframe. And to be clear, when I say we don't want, I mean we don't want it to be selected. So an easy way to deselect this right here. This. Yeah, we want the area here selected. So I'm going to press C for paint select. Here's my paint select circle. I'm rolling the mouse to make this bigger. Now I'm just going to hold the middle mouse button. And we went into wireframe mode so we could select, make sure that we actually are selecting what we want to select. And I'm just deselecting all of the geometry that I don't want. So now I'm letting go of the middle mouse button. That's how I was deselecting. I'm right clicking to get out of paint select so I can rotate the view. I don't want this geometry here, so I'm going to press C again for paint select, hold the middle mouse button to deselect. Now I'm going to right click to get out of paint select. Okay, what we're going to do now is press Z, go back to solid view. We still have those edges selected. And what we're going to do is add geometry. There, we're going to use the bevel to do that. All right. So the way we're going to do a bevel, and we're going to bevel all these edges at the same time. Here's an edge I don't want selected, so I'm going to press C, press the middle mouse button once, and then right click to get out of paint select. So we want to bevel all these edges, right? So I'm going to hold Control, press B. That activates a way of beveling, right? So I'm going to hold Shift for fine control. Then I'm going to pull my mouse down. I'm going to left click to lock that in. I'm letting go of Shift. So you can see now we have this, all of the edges we had selected, they were edges and now they are faces, which is what we want. Okay, the reason why we did that was we want to have geometry to connect to this geometry. So the plan is to use these faces to connect to this geometry right here. Okay, so since we have that geometry, we're going to left click on nothingness to deselect. I'm going to hold Alt, then press A just to make sure I absolutely have nothing selected. I'm going to hold Shift to pan the view. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button. I'm going to hold Shift, press B. Then I'm going to draw a zoom box to zoom in here. I'll zoom back some now. When you're working on your retopology, as you fill in areas, you can always come back. The reason why I'm saying this is this looks kind of strange. I have this set up here. So what we can do is press C. And I'm selecting these faces here. I'm going to right click to get out of paint select. I press C to go into paint select. So I right click, get out of it. We're on face select. So I'm going to press X to bring up our delete menu. Then I'm going to choose faces to delete. Okay, so when I'm changing geometry, it helps me to go to vertex select. I just want this to flow into this. So I'm looking for it to have my faces be 4 faces. So I'm going to click here, hold Control. I'm going to right click. All right, so now we can see there's 4 vertices here as well as 4 vertices there. So I'm going to left click to deselect. I'm going to click here, hold Shift, then press F to fill. Now I'm just holding Shift, and then I'm going to press F to fill for there as well. Okay, so when you're working on your retopology, if you have geometry that looks strange, you can always go back and change it. See this right here? I want to get rid of this just going off to nowhere, so I'm going to click there, hold Shift, and then click here. I let go of Shift. I'm going to hold Alt, press M. This brings up our merge menu. I'm going to select at last. Now I'm going to left click to deselect. Okay, I'm going to hold the middle mouse button, rotate the view. I'm going to go back to edge select. I'm going to left click here. I'm thinking about connecting here to here. I want to change the angle slightly, so I'm going to press O to turn on our proportional editing tool. The proportional editing tool allows you to move more than one vertex, edge, or face at a time. You can see this is showing the proportional editing tool is on. I'm going to press G, and when I roll my mouse, there's the influence of our proportional editing tool. So now I'm going to press R to rotate, and I'm just trying to rotate towards that. Now I'm going to press G and move this towards that. I'm going to click here, press R, press G, press R to rotate. Then I'm going to left click on nothingness to deselect. I'm going to click here on this edge, hold shift, then click here, let go of shift. Now I'm pressing F, or I pressed F to deselect. I'm not to to fill. I left click to deselect. So now I'm taking a look. Okay. Okay, I'm holding them in the mouse button. Let's click here, hold shift, click here, then press, how do I do that? Press F to fill. I'm going to left click to deselect. Holding control as well as the middle mouse button to zoom in. What I'm doing now is I'm looking here, and we're working on filling in this geometry. Remember, we can come back and change it later. I've selected these faces. I'm going to press F. I'm going to press F here. I don't want that proportional editing on. I'm going to press O to turn off proportional editing. I'm going to hold control, press R, left click again. I'm going to go to vertex select these faces here. And I'm going to press F to fill. Looking here, I'm trying to think of the, what I want to do here. This is, for now, again, we can come back. I'm going to put a loop cut here, and I'm doing this because I want 4 faces. So I'm going to hold control. So now with, let's see, yeah, so now we can get a face here, a face there. So we'll click here, hold shift, press F to fill. And we'll click here, holding shift, F to fill. I left clicked on nothingness to deselect. I'm holding shift, and then we'll press F2 fill. Now left click on nothingness to deselect. Big piece of geometry here. Let's split that up by holding control, then pressing R. We'll left click once, left click a second time to lock that in. We'll even that out here by holding control, pressing R there. Let's start to fill this in here. We'll hold Control, press R, left click once, left click a second time to lock that in. Left click on nothingness to deselect. We'll go to Edge Select. Okay, I'm gonna left click here. Let's press F, 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 F. Left click on nothingness to deselect. Okay, let's go to Vertex Select. Typically when I'm trying to think about geometry, Vertex Select helps me to think. I'm going to hold Control, then press R. And what I just did, the reason why what I'm thinking now is I see these vertices here, so I'm like, oh, if I put this here, I can get a face right here. So that's basically what my thinking was just now. So that's hold Shift, then press F to fill. So now I'm like, okay, we want to have this can be a face. Let's put a loop cut here. That's my thinking. So I'm like Control R, left click once, because we left click once, we can slide that edge loop. Now we're going to left click a second time and lock that in. I'm left clicking on nothingness, deselect, clicking here, holding. Like selected there, I'm holding Shift. Now that those four faces selected, I let go of Shift. I'm pressing F to fill. Now I'm going to left click on nothingness to deselect. Okay, what I'm thinking right here as I look at this space is I'm like, oh, I'm always looking for four faces. So I'm like, if I put a vertex here, oh, this would be four faces here. And then I'm like, oh, look at that. If I put that there, there'll be, enough to have a four vertice face here as well as here. When I look here, I'm like, oh, look at that, four faces. So that's kind of how I think as I'm doing this. So we have vertex select in the upper left hand corner. So I'm gonna left click here, hold Control. Again, I'm looking here and I'm like, oh, we can have a four vertice face. So then while holding Control, I right click, I let go of Control. So now I'm like, oh, here we go. So I click here, hold Shift, select these vertices, and I press F. Then I'm like, oh, I can see that I'm holding Shift, that I can make a four vertice face there as well. So I press F. Okay, so my thinking now is I'm going to left click. I'm like, oh, if I put a vertex here, a vertex here, a vertex there, I'll get four faces here. And then I can easily put loop cuts here to match that. So with vertex on in the upper left hand corner, we'll left click here, hold Control. Again, I'm mainly thinking of four faces. And you can see how that will form there. Let's go to edge select. Let's see if Blender will do this for us. F, 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 and it did, which is excellent. Okay, so we have those faces there. So now we turn and we look here. So let's hold Control, press R, put a loop cut in, left click once, left click a second time to lock that in. So there's a face, there'll be another face. We can get another face here by putting another loop cut. So I'm holding Control, pressing R, left click once. Because I left click once, I can slide this loop cut. I'm going to left click a second time. We're on edge select in the upper left hand corner. So now I'm going to left click here. And then yeah, okay. With this selected here, we're going to press F, F, F. Now left click to deselect. Okay, we want to fill in this geometry here. I'm going to tell myself to move on as we can come back. I'm going to get a face select in the upper left hand corner. I'm going to select this, press X to bring up our delete menu, then choose faces to delete. Okay, when I look here, I don't want to put a loop cut here, but putting loop cuts here, I'm fine in. I'm fine with putting loop cuts here because they'll be located in this region, just like how my mouse is moving. But if I put a loop cut here, that loop cut will go all the way down, right? So right here, I'm like, we can put a loop cut here. I'm going to hold Control, press R, left click to lock that in, left click a second time to totally lock that in. We can click here, press G twice, which lets us slide this edge. I did that because I'm going to go to vertex select in the upper left hand corner. I'm going to left click on nothingness, deselect. I'll select here, holding shift. So I selected all those 4 vertices. Okay, so now we have, here, like face here, we can put a face there, right? So I'll left click here, hold control, and you can see like how the faces will be. You can see the faces here, so we'll need another loop cut here. We'll hold control, press R, left click once, left click a second time. To lock that in, we'll left click on nothingness to deselect. Okay, so we're in vertex select in the side there. We'll click here, hold shift, select these vertices, press F, holding shift. I just click off of nothingness just to, I don't know. I like selecting and knowing like I'm in control of the vertices. So I'm gonna with this select, I'm gonna hold control, click there, and see we have 4 vertices there. Sorry, not faces, 4 vertices here. So we'll click there, hold shift, press F to fill, then press F to fill. Okay, I'm gonna left click here, hold control, then while holding control, right click. So now that lets us select that vertice as well as these other ones. Press F to fill. So we selected those vertices, we'll press F to fill, and now we have this. And we'll press F to fill. No, left click to deselect. Now later on, we might change this to have a loop cut going down. My main concern with the loop cut going down is it affecting this area here that the leg is going to come out, at least for now. Okay, I'm going to hold them in the mouse button and rotate the view. Okay, we can bevel these pieces here as well. So let's go to edge select. So I held shift to select those edges. I'm holding control, pressing B, holding shift for fine control, then left clicking to lock that in. I'm gonna left click to deselect. Okay, I'm gonna hold them in the mouse button and rotate the view. We want to make sure these faces are in these spaces like this, right? So I'm gonna go to a top view. I'm gonna press G, move that down some. I'll click here, press G, move that up some, and I'll left click to deselect. Okay, I'm gonna hold them in the mouse button to rotate the view. The reason why we bevel was so that we can go, we want to go to edge select, and the reason why we bevel is so we can click this edge here, click a similar edge like here, and then press F to fill. All right, we'll do the same thing here. We'll that's end. When you click on nothingness, you still have the bevel. I'm holding Alt and A. So I'm gonna click here, hold Shift. So we can't. It's interesting. We can't do that there. So now we need the geometry to do my plan. Let's go down. So we'll click here. We'll select where we can. Press F to fill. Click here. Hold Shift. Press F to fill. So you see other places where we beveled. Maybe not all of them, but we'll hold Control. Press R. Left click. Left click. We left click once. We can move the loop cut. We're gonna left click a second time to lock that in. We'll click here. Hold Shift. Press F to fill. Left click on nothingness to deselect. Okay, I'm gonna hold them in the mouse button. I'm gonna hold Control, press R, roll my mouse one time, left click once, move this up some, left click a second time. I'm gonna hold Alt, click here, press G twice so I can slide this edge loop, left click once. I did all that because I want to go from here to here. So I'm going to left click on that edge, hold shift, then click there, and then press F. Left click on nothingness to deselect. Okay, I'm going to hold the mouse button. I want this to connect, but not right here. So what I'm going to do is hold Control, press R to put a loop cut. When I right click once, I can move this loop cut because I did that. Then I'm going to hover here, hold Control, press R. I left click. Well, I did it. I put Control R to put the loop cut in. I'm left clicking once so I can move this loop cut. I'm moving this to here. I'm going to left click a second time to lock that in. Left click to deselect. We're still on edge select. I'm going to click here, hold shift. While holding shift, click there. Then press F to fill. Okay, I'm going to left click to nothingness, deselect. I'm going to hold Control, press R. Left click once because I left click once. I can move the loop cut. I'm going to left click a second time. Left click to deselect. Click here, hold shift. Then while holding shift, I was able to select the other edge, and I'm going to press F to fill. I'll left click on nothingness to deselect. I'm going to hold shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan. I'm going to hover here, hold Control, press R, left click once. Because I left click once, I can move the loop cut. I'm going to move that like that. Left click to lock that in place. Left click on nothingness to deselect. We're still on edge select. I'm going to left click here while holding shift, click here, then press F to fill, and then I'm going to left click on nothingness to deselect. I'm going to hold shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan. I'm going to hover here. Now see, this is where, and this is interesting, we won't be able to put a loop cut there. So we won't be able to put a loop cut here. Let's put a loop cut here. We're going to hold Control, press R. We're going to left click once. Because we left click once, we can move the loop cut. I'm going to left click a second time. Left click on nothingness to deselect. We're still on edge select. So I'm going to click here, hold shift. Then while holding shift, click here. Now I'm going to press F to fill. Then left click on nothingness to deselect. Okay, I'm going to roll the mouse wheel back. What we're going to do is go to face select, press C for paint select these faces here, not that. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to get rid of that face. I'm going to press X to bring up our delete menu. Choose faces to delete while we delete those faces that we just made, so we can go to edge select. Then click this edge and then press F, 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 F. I'm going to left click to deselect. Okay, with edge select on, I'm going to hold Alt, left click here, then press F to fill that in. Then I'm going to left click on nothingness to deselect. Hold Alt, then press A to totally deselect. Okay, I'm going to roll the mouse wheel to zoom back. I'm going to hold Shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to rotate the view. We want our geometry to flow down and then going back like that. The way that we can do this is we're on edge select, so let's select this edge here. I'm holding shift. I'm going to select these other edges. I'm now going to press E to extrude and then right click. I made new geometry. It doesn't look like it did anything, but there's new geometry there. We're going to go to our upper left, go to our move tool, and then we're going to take this geometry, we're going to pull this back. We want this geometry as far as this edge to go straight up and down. To do that, what we can do is we can press S to scale on the Y-axis 0, and then left click to lock that in. Okay, I'm going to take the manipulator and pull this back more like that. I'm going to left click to deselect. Okay, I'm going to hold shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan. What we're going to do is we're going to hover here, hold control, press R to put a loop cut in. We're going to left click once because we left click once, we can move the loop cut. We're going to move this forward. Then left click a second time. I'm going to left click on nothingness to deselect. And I'm looking at, we can make a face here that has 4 vertices. So I'll click here, hold shift, Click here as well as here. And then I'll press F2 fill. Then I'll left click to deselect. I'll click here, hold shift, and then press F to fill. Then I'll left click on nothingness to deselect. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to look at these spaces here. This is a good angle here, so I want to match this up with that. So I'm going to hold Control, press R, left click once so I can move a loop cut, this loop cut up. So see how we could attach this here. For this here, we're going to left click on nothingness to deselect. We'll hold Control, press R. Put a loop cut there, hold Control, press R. To match this up with that, to match this up here, we'll hold Control, press R to put a loop cut in. That should match up. We need one here. Control R. We need another loop cut. Control R. We need another loop cut here. Control R. One here. Control R. Control R. One here. Control R. Control R to put another one in. Then I'm going to left click on nothingness to deselect. I'm going to hold Control, then press A to absolutely deselect. Okay, we're going to hold the middle mouse button to rotate. With edge select on, we're going to click this edge here, hold shift. We're going to click this edge here and then press F to fill. Then I'm going to left click on nothingness to deselect. Okay, the reason why I stopped here was because we don't have a loop cut to match up there. So I'm going to hold Control, press R, put one loop cut in. Because I left click one time, I can move the loop cut. Then I'm going to left click to lock that in. Left click on nothingness to deselect. Rolling the mouse wheel to zoom in, holding shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan. I'm going to hold Control, press R, left click once. Because I left click once, I can move this loop cut, moving it down. I'm going to left click to lock that in. Then I'm going to left click on nothingness to deselect. Okay, I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to rotate the view. I'm going to left click here. I'm going to press F, F, F. Okay, I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to rotate the view. I'm going to hover above here, hold shift, press B to draw a zoom box to zoom in. Okay, I'm going to hold Alt, press A to absolutely deselect. We could have another loop cut right here, so let's hold Control, press R. I'm going to left click once, left click a second time to lock in, left click on nothingness to deselect. Click here, then press F. I'm going to go to Vertex Select. Okay, I'm going to click this vertex here and pull that forward. So right here I'm looking for our face. I'm going to hold Control, press R, left click. When I say looking for the face, what I mean is 4 vertices that will make a face that will also allow us to select this edge here and then just press F. Like that. So we have 4 here, but here we don't. Okay, I'm going to roll the mouse wheel to zoom back, left click on nothingness to deselect. So when you look at this, you know, this is totally flat, which is fine for now. We need to put a loop cut so this matches up. So this is going to, you know, this think of this coming down and basically connecting here. So we're going to hold Control, press R to put a loop cut in. We're going to left click once, move this loop cut up, left click again to lock that in. Then what we're going to do is press G. And when I press G, you can see that edge is now snapped to our sculpted mesh underneath. I'm going to left click on nothingness to deselect. Okay, if you look here, you can see that edge can go right in here. We need an edge for this as well as here. So we'll hold Control, press R. I'll left click once, because I left click once, I can move this. I'll move this down slightly, then left click a second time to lock that in. We need another loop cut here, so I left clicked on nothingness. I'm going to hold control, press R, left click once, move this up slightly, left click a second time to lock that in, then I'll left click on nothingness to deselect. Okay, I'm going to hold them the mouse button, so we need to have this snap. So we're still on edge select. We're going to hold Alt, turn to the side. We'll press G, get that to snap. We'll left click on nothingness to deselect. We'll hold Alt, left click here, press G to get that to snap, then left click to lock that snap in. And when I say snap, it's our, the same thing that we're using to do our retopology is working when we press G and then left click. That's making this edge snap to the surface of the mesh underneath. I'm going to left click on nothingness to deselect. Okay, I'm going to roll the mouse wheel to zoom back. I'm going to hold shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan. I'm going to go to the upper right to the red X, which we can see it says shortcut number pad 3. This will take us into a right view. So I left click that. Look to your upper left, you'll see we're in right orthographic mode. You want to look to your upper middle screen, like right in the middle of your upper screen. You want to temporarily turn off snapping. With edge select on, you want to hold Alt, select the edge loop I'm right over. So I'm letting go of Alt, hold Shift, press D, right click. We duplicated that edge. We're moving this into place over this limb right here. I'm going to press S to scale on the Z axis. Move that up like that. Okay, with this edge still selected, we're going to hold Shift, press D, right click, move this up over to here. We'll press S to scale like that. I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to hold Shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan. I'm going to zoom in like this. I'm going to press S to scale. Now I'm going to press E to extrude, right click. I made new geometry, you can't see it, but now I'm going to press S to scale this geometry up just slightly. Now I'm going to go to face select. And what I'm trying to do here is make room for the geometry that I just put in. Okay, I'm going to left click on nothingness to deselect, click to go to edge select. Okay, with edge select on, I'm going to click this edge right here. Well, I'm going to hold Alt. Okay, there we go. So when you hold Alt, you're able to select the entire edge loop. I'm going to press, I'm going to hold Shift as well as the mouse button to pan. I'm going to press E to extrude, right click, then press S to scale. If you're having issues, just remember, before I told you to turn off the snapping's on. It's going to most likely cause you issues as you try to scale. Okay, I'm going to left click on nothingness to deselect. I'm going to hold Shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan. I'm holding the middle mouse button to rotate. I'm going to hover here, hold Control, press R to put a loop cut there. I'm going to left click once, left click a second time to lock that in. Actually, I want this to be straight, so I'm going to push, but no, not yet. I'm going to temporarily turn this on. Press G to get that to lock into place. Now I'm going to left click here. I'm going to press G to move this down out of the way. If you have issues moving this, you could turn on proportional editing tool. The proportional editing tool that might help you out. I'm going to left click to deselect. And that we didn't totally deselect, so I'm going to hold Alt, press A to deselect all the way. I'll push this down, make it more circular. So basically what I'm trying to do is save us time by doing this. I'm going to left click on nothingness to deselect. Okay, I'm going to roll the mouse wheel to zoom back. Okay, what we're going to do is go to face select. Okay, with face select on, we're going to select here. I'm going to hold shift here, 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 as well as here. Okay, I'm going to roll the mouse wheel back. I'm going to hold shift. I'm selecting these faces here. I'm going to hold shift as well as the mouse button to pan. I'll select here as well. I'll let go of shift. Okay, what you want to do now is go to your upper middle screen, turn off snapping. You're going to go to your upper right hand screen. You're going to select a viewport shading wireframe. And now with that, what you're going to do is you're going to press E to extrude, and then you're just going to move your mouse. So we move pretty far to the side. Now what we're going to do is take this manipulator and push this over. So we want to be basically over the top of these extrusions here. That actually looks pretty good how it is. We can adjust them later, but that looks pretty good so far. So I am going to left click to deselect. I'm going to go to the upper right, go back to viewport shading. And now I'm going to turn back on snapping. Okay, if you're like, why do you have them so much bigger than they are here? Like, why are they so much bigger? Better to have them bigger than too close. You'll see as we move forward, hopefully anyway, they will hopefully snap to these. So it's important that they're bigger. So my main thinking was they're taller, substantially taller, but if everything works out right, it shouldn't matter. Better have them be taller than shorter than what they need to be. Okay, so this should be interesting. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to our main scene collection screen. We're going to look for sphere. Sphere is our main sculpted mesh. We're going to click this arrow so we can select our sculpted mesh again. We're going to go to our upper left. We're going to go to object mode. We're going to left click on our sculpted mesh. Okay, so with the sculpted mesh selected, we're going to click, it looks like a monitor, so that we see our entire sculpted mesh. Okay, now that we can see it, we're going to go back to the arrow, turn that off so that we can't select our sculpted mesh by accident. We're going to click on our retopology mesh, go to the upper left, and then we're going to go back into edit mode. Okay, we're going to hold the middle mouse button to see what we have. The main thing I'm looking for here was I wanted to make sure that this was not over top of the legs. Does not look like it is, and that is a good thing. Okay, so we're going to go to edge select. I'm going to hold Alt, left click here, hold Shift, press D, then right click. I'm going to turn off snapping. I'm going to push this down like this. Hold the middle mouse button to rotate the view. I'm going to press S to scale on the X-axis 0 to flatten that out. I'm going to left click to lock that in. Okay, what I'm doing now is I'm going to press R to rotate on the Y axis like this. I'll press S to scale this down. Remember, the snapping is off. So I'm making sure this is inside of the actual leg, right? And what I'm going to do now with this select, I'm actually going to go up to the upper left, go to vertex select. I'm going to press P to separate, and then I'm going to choose selection. Okay, what we're going to do now is go to our upper left. We're going to left click to go to object mode. We're going to select this new object that we made. We're going to go to the upper left. Then we're going to go into edit mode for that object. Okay, here in edit mode, we're going to press A to select that object. We're going to press E to extrude and then right click. To push the extrusion down. I'm going to hold shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan. I'm going to hold control as well as the middle mouse button to zoom in. Shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan. Our normals are not facing the right direction, so what we can do is hold control, press L. That'll select all of the geometry. You can see the inside is showing the geometry instead of the outside. So what we can do is go to, let's go to face select. We'll go to mesh, normals, and then let's try, what is it, recalculate inside. Okay, it looks like that's not right, so we'll go to mesh, normals, and then we'll recalculate outside. There we go. So I'm going to left click to deselect, and that looks decent. I'm going to hover here, press L, hold shift, press D, right click to make a duplicate of this. Push that in like that. I am going to left click on nothing, is deselect, hover here, press L, hold shift, press D, right click. Move this up, over, like that. Hold shift, press D, right click. Move this up and over like that. I'll hold shift, press D, right click. Pull this back to here. What I'm doing is I'm trying to make sure as I rotate the mouse, like you see me rotating around, trying to make sure that this is inside of the leg, that it's not coming through. So I'm going to hold shift, press D, right click, push this down like that. Just hold the middle mouse button, making sure that that is inside of the leg. I'm going to I need to, let's go to the red X, let's press R to rotate. Make sure this is inside. You can see the leg is bending back this way, so that's why I did that. Hold shift, press D, right click. It's back. I'm gonna hold shift, press D, right click. Push this. Press R to rotate like this. Press S to scale. We want these to be inside. This one looks like it might be out. So I'll hover here, press L. Press S to scale that down. Just to be safe. I'll click there, press L, press S to scale. I'm gonna hover here, press L, up, left click, deselect, hover here, press L, hold shift, press D, right click, push this down like this. I'll go to the red X, press R to rotate. Now I'm holding the middle mouse button just to make sure that that's inside of the actual mesh. So I'll click the red X again. Hold shift and the middle mouse button. This, I think, think that's good. I'll left click on nothingness to deselect. Go to the upper right, click the red X again. Okay, what's going on here as far as these is if you snap to go around in a loop, sometimes it's difficult. We separate this piece out so that the modifier we are going to use can work just on these pieces right here. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to go to our upper left. We're going to go to object mode. And with the work that we just did selected, we're going to go to add modifier. We're going to go to the Shrinkwrap modifier, scroll down. Where we see this nearest surface point, we're going to click the arrow there. We're going to select project. We're going to click on our sculpted. Well, we can't click on it. Here's our sphere that's our sculpted mesh. We're going to click this arrow. So with that now selectable, because we put this arrow back on, we're going to go to the target for our shrink wrap, which is connected to these. We're going to click on our sculpted mesh. And when we did that, now these pieces are snapped in a sense to this sculpted mesh here, which is what we want. Okay, what we're going to do is hold the middle mouse button and rotate. We can see that there's an issue right here. So what we can do with that is we'll click back on our mesh right here. We'll go to the upper left. We'll click edit mode. We'll hover over here. We'll press L. And if we push down, there we go. Just by doing that, we were able to fix that issue. So we're going to left click on nothingness to deselect. We're going to go back to our upper left and then go back to object mode. Okay, since that's good now, we're going to go to our, we have this selected, right? We're going to go to our shrink wrap modifier. We're going to left click on apply. Okay, with that done, we're going to click back on our main sculpted mesh. We're going to go back to our upper right to our scene collection. We're going to click this arrow so we can't select that by accident. Okay, so what we're going to do now is click back on this object right here. We're going to hold shift and then we're going to select our retopology mesh and let go of shift. I'm going to hold control, then press J. So now you can see this took on the color of the retopology mesh. So this is now one object again. Okay, so with this selected, let's go to our upper left. Let's go back to edit mode. Okay, this is giving us an issue, so we're on face select. We're going to press L to select that. We're going to press X to bring up our delete menu, then choose faces to delete. This is giving us an issue as well. Hover here, press X, press faces to delete. So what we can do now is go to edge select. We'll hold Alt, click there, hold Shift as well as Alt. Wrong thing. I held Shift and I selected this, I held Shift and I could deselect it. So now I'm holding Shift still, holding Alt and clicking right, trying to click. The manipulator's blocking, so I'm holding Shift and Alt. So now I have that entire edge loop selected. With that edge loop selected, I can hold Control, press E. This brings up our edges menu. Then I can select Bridge Edge Loops. Now left click to deselect. Hold Shift and the middle mouse button to pan down some. Hold Alt, click here. Hold Shift as well as Alt. I'll click here. And then I'll hold Control, press E. This brings up our edges menu. And then I'll select Bridge Edge Loops. Then I'll left click to deselect. Okay, I'm going to hold Shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to hold Alt, left click, hold Shift while holding Alt. Hold Control, press E. This brings up our edges menu. We're going to select Bridge Edge Loops. We're going to hold Alt, hold Shift while holding Alt. Hold Control, press E. This brings up our edges menu. We're going to select Bridge Edge Loops. We're going to left click. We're going to hold Alt, hold Shift So I'm holding Shift and Alt. Then I'm going to click there, let go of Shift and Alt, hold Control, press E. This brings up our edges menu. We're going to select Bridge Edge Loops. Then left click to deselect. Okay, I'm going to roll the mouse wheel to zoom back. I'm going to hold Alt, select here, hold Shift while selecting Alt, select there. I'm going to hold Control, press E. This brings up our edges menu. I'm going to select the Bridge Edge Loops. Then I'm going to left click to deselect. Okay, I'm going to hold Alt, press A to deselect everything. I'm on edge select. I'm going to hold Alt, click here. I am going to hold Shift as well as I'm in the mouse button pan. I'm going to hold Shift as well as Alt. I'm going to select this inner loop. I'm going to hold Control, press E. This brings up our edges menu. I'm going to select Bridge Edge Loops. I'm going to left click to deselect. And I roll the mouse back. I'm going to hold Control, press R, left click once, left click a second time to lock that in. And left click here, hold Shift. Pull this all the way out like this. Hold Control, press R. I'm going to right click to get out of that. That's what I want, loop cut there. I'm going to left click once, left click a second time. When you are about to do something, you right click. It's kind of like almost like a undo in a sense in Blender. Left click on nothingness, holding Shift. Control R, left click once, left click a second time. Holding Shift. Hold Control, press R, left click once, left click a second time. Selecting, I'm going to go to the select box just so the manipulator wasn't in the way. Bring the manipulator back by selecting the move tool. Bring that up like that. Okay, I'm going to hold them in the mouse button to rotate, left click to deselect. Okay, I'm going to hold them in the mouse button to rotate to the side. I'm going to hover here, hold Control, press R. To put a loop cut in, Control R pushed. I'm going to roll the mouse wheel one time. I'm going to left click to lock that in. Left click a second time to totally lock that in. I'm going to left click on nothingness to deselect. I'm going to turn the snapping back on. I'm going to click here. I'm going to go to the upper left, go to the select tool. I'm going to hold Shift. Then I'm going to press G. And I chose this without selecting the whole loop because I just want these pieces to snap to what we're looking at here. So I'm doing the same thing there. So we're pretty much selectively snapping. And that way we can keep things under control. We see this here. Go to vertex select. Press G. I'm going to hover here. Let me turn off snapping. I'm going to hold Control, press R. I'm going to put in 4 loop cuts, then left click once, left click a second time to lock that in. Left click on nothings to deselect. Okay, I'm going to hold them in the mouse button to rotate the view. I'm going to we're going to turn on snapping. I'm going to press C for paint select. We'll select. Press G. Press G now, so we'll just trying to get this to snap. That's what I'm doing, is just selecting and trying to think where the surface is at and getting this to snap to the surface. I'm gonna left click on nothingness to deselect. I'm gonna hold control, press R, put another loop cut in. I'm gonna left click once, left click a second time to lock that in. Left click on nothingness to deselect. You got to be careful when you put a loop cut in, because we didn't turn off snapping. Because if you put a loop cut in and you try to press G, the part that you can't see will snap to the part that you can see. So you have to be careful about that. And press G. Hold the mouse button to rotate the view. Okay, we're going to turn snapping off. We're going to go to edge select. We're going to hold Alt. Select this edge here. We're going to press E to extrude, right click. We're going to go to our move tool. Push this up somewhat into place. Let's press S to scale on the x-axis 0 to flatten that out. Now we'll press R to rotate on the y-axis to rotate that some. Press as the scale to scale it down some. Left click on nothingness to deselect. I'm going to hold the mouse button to rotate the view. I'm going to turn snapping on. I'm going to go to the upper left to turn on vertex select. I'm going to go to edge select. Press G to get that to snap right there. I'm going to hold control, then right click. Okay, I'm going to hold control again, right click, and I see this kind of like knuckle thing here. I'm purposely making sure there's a face right there. This, I'm just going to go right up here to this other knuckle that's right here. So I just held control, I pushed that, and hold G. So now we have these things are going to come out from here, right? So we know this. So we're going to need basically 4 faces. So I'm going to hold control, right click. So one group of faces can come out from there. Another, group can come out from here. Another group can come out from there. I'm letting go of control. Okay, I'm going to click here, hold shift. I want to give some extra flexibility here, so I'm going to hold control, press B for bevel. I'm going to hold shift for fine selection. Then I'm going to left click to lock that in. Left click on nothingness to deselect. I have this selection here, so I'm going to hold Alt, then press A to deselect. Okay, I'm going to press O to turn on the proportional editing tool. I'm going to select here. I'm going to press R to rotate. I'm just trying to aim this direction. Basically, I'm going to press O to turn off the proportional editing tool. And with this edge selected, I'm going to hold control, then right click, right click, right click, right click, right click. I'm going to left click on nothingness to deselect. Okay, so we need 3 more. Not sure what I was thinking before. I'm going to press O to turn on the proportional editing tool. Press G to move this down some, like that. I'm going to press O to turn off the proportional editing tool. I'm going to hold Control, press R, left click once, left click a second time to lock that loop cut in. With that edge selected, I'm going to hold Control, press B, hold Shift for fine selection so I can bevel, left click to lock that in, left click to deselect. I am going to, with edge select on, click here, hold Control, right click. I want that a similar distance. I'm just pulling this out like this, holding Control, 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 as well as Control. Now I'm going to left click to deselect. Okay, I'm going to hold Shift as well as the middle mouse button. Let's move down. Edge select on, I'm going to select here. I'm holding Control, pressing Control again, Control, Control, as well as Control. I'll go to Vertex select, I'll click here to move the manipulator, click here, then press G, just to get that to snap. Okay, I'm going to click this vertex. I'll click this one, push this down and over some. I'm going to go to edge select, click here, hold Control, and then Control, Control, hold Shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan down, Control, I'm looking at this now and I'm thinking about this matching up with this, so that's why I'm pushing this back. Control, Control, as well as Control. I'll left click on nothingness to deselect. I'm going to zoom back. I'm going to run edge select, so I'm going to click here, hold Control. I'm holding Shift, now I'm holding Control. Now I'm going to hold Control, press R. Oops, sorry. Hold Control, press E. Okay, what's going on here? Hold Control, press E. There we go. Bridge edge loops. So I'll click here, hold Control, hold Shift, hold Control. Control is the shortest path thing. I click, hold Control, I click here, hold Control, and then you hold Control, it selects everything in between. I'm going to hold Control, press E. This brings up our edges menu. I'm going to select bridge edge loops. I'm going to left click to deselect. Okay, I'm going to left click here. Hold, oops, sorry. Left click on nothingness. Click here, hold Control, click here, letting go of Control, holding Shift, letting go of Shift, holding Control. Now with that done, here, just seeing where they'll connect. I'm going to hold Control, press E. This brings up our edges menu. I'm going to select the bridge edge loops, then left click to deselect. Okay, I'm going to go to the upper left-hand corner. I'm going to hold Control, click there, left click here, hold Control, click there, left click here, hold Control, click there, left click on nothingness, left click here, hold Control, click there. So now I'll zoom in. Hold Control, press R to put a loop cut in, left click once, because I left click once I can move the loop cut. I'll click here, aim this to where I want it to be. I press G. So we need 4 faces. Okay, so this is in the way here, so we'll go to edge select, we'll click this edge, we'll press X to bring up our delete menu, then we'll select dissolve edges. And dissolve edges gets rid of an edge with while trying to not basically mess up your other geometry. So I'm just pushing this over. With that out of the way, I'll click here, press F to fill. Wonder if that'll work here. So we'll click this edge. Let's press F. Nope, it won't work. Okay. Holding Shift, pressing F. Holding Shift, pressing F. Holding Shift, pressing F. Okay, we're going to roll the mouse wheel back. Hold Shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan. Hold Control as well as the middle mouse button to zoom in. I'm going to left click on nothingness. We're on vertex select. So I'm going to left click on that vertex. I'm holding Control. Right click. Right click. Right click. Right click. So I'm clicking on this vertex. Right click. Right click. Right click, as well as right click for right there. Okay, what we're going to do now is roll the mouse wheel to zoom back. I'm going to press C for paint slab. Let me right click to get out of paint select. I'll go to upper left face select. Press C for paint select. I'm going to paint all of this geometry that we just made. I'm just holding down the left mouse button. I right click to get out of paint select just so I can hold Shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan. Then I'm going to press C, then left click again. Then I'm going to right click to get out of paint select. Okay, the reason why we did that is we want to save work or time from working whenever we can. So what we're going to do is we're going to duplicate this. I'm going to hold Shift, press D, then right click, turn off snapping. I'm going to go to the upper middle screen, change our transform to normal, because I think this will help pushing. We just made a duplicate of this geometry. We're going to push this to the other side. And I think having this be set to normal will make that easier to do. See an extra piece of geometry here. So I'll select that, press X. This brings up our delete menu, then choose vertices to delete. I'll press L here. So this, our normals are probably not facing the correct direction. If you want to see when your normals are facing the correct direction or not, you can go up to the upper right. So where we see this overlays, we'll click the arrow, we'll come down to where we see normals here. Normals are basically the direction that your polygons, for the most part, are supposed to face. So if we, okay, there's vertex normals, edge normals, split normals, display normals, okay. Let's click vertex normals. Now see, there's these little, they almost look like blue hairs coming out. See how on this side we don't see anything, right? I'm going to hold the middle mouse button, and it's kind of difficult to see, but if you look here, the normals are facing that direction. So we want them to be facing out. We also can see through the normals as well. So turning on that the normals can be useful for just knowing for sure which direction your normals are facing. So with this selected, what we're going to do is we're going to go to Mesh, Normals, and then we're going to select Flip. And now you can see this is solid. And if you look, the kind of difficult to see, but the blue lines are actually coming out on this side. Okay, so we're going to go back to the upper right. We're going to go down to normals and turn them off. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button. Just taking a look. All right, so what we're going to do is we want to snap this as best as we can to the wing. To do that, let's have just this geometry to work with. How do we do that? We hold Shift, we press H, and now we hid all of the geometry other than what we have currently selected. Okay, I'm going to hold Shift as well as middle mouse button to pan. You tend to have issues with things like right here. Like we're going to rotate the view. However, we're going to left click on nothingness. We're going to press C for paint select. And we're going to purposely not select the pieces of geometry that are going over the edge like that. I'm going to right click together, paint select. I'm going to turn on snapping. We're going to the upper center of the screen. Then we're going to press G. Then left click to lock that in. Okay, I'm going to hold the middle mouse button and okay, that looks like it snapped well. So now let's left click on nothingness. Let's go to edge select. We'll select this edge, hold control. While holding control, we'll click that edge. We used the shortest path technique, so we clicked and then clicked and everything in between was filled in. So now what I'm going to do is rotate the view, just trying to get this to snap as best as it can. So let's try it out. We're going to press G, left click to lock in. Looks pretty good. So now we'll click here, press G. Let's go to one vertex here. Clicking here just to move the manipulator, this thing here out of the way. Then I'm going to press G. Good. Okay, I'm going to left click to deselect. So we're going to press C to activate paint select, left click, right click to get out of paint select, press G to snap, left click to lock that in. Same here, we'll left click to deselect, press C to paint select, right click, press G, left click to lock that in. Okay, I'm going to hold the mouse button. Let's hold Shift, press B, draw a zoom box to zoom in. So we'll click here, press G, left click to lock in. This in view, click here, press G, left click to lock in. Then left click on nothingness to deselect. Okay, let's zoom back. Since we have these two here, press C for paint select. We'll press G, left click to lock in. Good. Left click to deselect. Okay, I'm going to hold Shift as well as the middle mouse button. Pan, click here. Okay, because his wing's in a way, that's not going to work. Because if I snap now, that vertex will be snapped to this wing. So we're on our transform is on normal. Let's change it back to global. Let's manually push this in. I'll left click on nothingness to deselect. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to hold Alt. While holding Alt, we're going to press H, and that brings back all of our other previously hidden geometry. Now left click on nothingness to deselect. Okay, I'm taking a look. We're going to go to face select. I'm going to hold Alt, hold Shift, and what I'm doing is I'm selecting all of these pieces here. So I'm clicking on the edge, right? We're on face select. So because I'm holding Shift as well as Alt, I am selecting. I'm letting go of Shift as well as Alt right now. Because I did that, I selected a loop going around that way, and that was useful because it allowed me to select these without selecting the body. Okay, with these selected, now I'm going to press C for paint select. I'm going to paint the top because everything should have been selected other than the tops. Be careful that you don't select anything other than these here. I'm going to right click to get out of paint select. Okay, we selected these so that we can temporarily move these out of the way, at least I think temporarily. So we're going to press the P key. And then that brought up our separate menu. We're then going to choose selection, which means we're going to separate by what we have selected. So now I left click that. So now these are all their own separate object. Okay, so we're going to go to our upper left. We're going to go to object mode. We're going to click on this new separate object. We're going to press H to hide that for now. Then we're going to go back to we're going to click back on our retopology mesh, go back to our upper left, and then go back to edit mode. Okay, I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to rotate the view. Let's click here, press X to bring up our delete menu, and then choose faces to delete. Okay, and I haven't mentioned it for a while, but we have a mirror modifier on here, so what we're doing on this side is being done to the other side. We just temporarily have this turned off. Okay, I'm going to hold the middle mouse button. We have this face here. Let's press X to bring up our delete menu, then choose faces to delete. Now let's go to edge select. The manipulator's in the way, so I'm going to go to the upper left to the select box. Hold Shift, click here by holding Shift. So I have those two faces, two edges selected. I'm going to press press F to fill. Sorry. I'm going to left click to deselect. Okay, we have edge select still selected, so we're going to left click here. My thinking now is I'm like, how far can we go up safely? I'm going to hold Control. So when I held Control, we used the shortest path technique. So we clicked here, held Control, clicked here, and all this work in between was selected. It's very useful. Now we're going to hold Shift, and we held Shift so that we could select this without losing that selection. I let go of Shift now, so now I'm not holding Shift. So now I'm going up to pretty much the opposite side of what we had selected, holding Control. We use the shortest path again. Okay, with that, those two edges selected, we're going to hold Control, press E. This brings up our edges menu. We're going to select Bridge Edge Loops. Excellent. So now we're going to try to do the same thing again. Hold Shift, hold Control. We're holding Shift so we don't lose that selection. We're letting go of Shift now. Holding Control, then pressing E. This brings up our Bridge Edge Loops menu. That's excellent. We're going to left click to deselect. Okay, I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to rotate the view. So what we want to do is left click here, hold Control, left click there. We're going to go to the other side. We're going to hold Shift so we don't lose our selection. Holding Shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan, letting go of Shift. Now I'm just holding Control, not holding Shift. Letting go of the shortest path. Now the shortest path, there is one thing. And we need to hold Shift and then select this. It's because it did take the shortest path, which was to dodge these. We want these. So we're going to hold Shift to deselect there. Still holding Shift. Let go of Shift just so I can rotate the view. Holding Shift. Holding Shift. Same thing here. Hold Shift to get rid of that. Holding Shift to select here. Letting go of Shift to rotate the view. Holding Shift to deselect this. Still holding Shift so I can select this edge. Holding Shift. Letting go of Shift to rotate. Holding Shift again. Now letting go of Shift. I'm just taking a look. I'm going to hold Shift to select here. I let go of Shift to rotate. Holding Shift. I'm going to deselect here. Okay, we're going to hold Control, press E. This brings up our Edges menu. We're going to select Bridge Edge Loops. Very good. We're going to left click to deselect.